All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Gonna be touching on the top showdown plays here for this Thursday night showdown between the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, as always, guys, I do want to start out with the game preview courtesy of the ODDSJAM Sportsbook View. Remember, this is a tool that updates the odds continuously throughout the day, and it'll show you guys the best odds for each game. Just looking at right now, we are seeing about a 2-point favorite are the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is a very ugly game, though, okay? Like, literally, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Derrick Henry, 21 carries for 85 yards. Najee Harris, 17 carries for 50 yards or something like that. Like, I feel like that could be the strategy that these teams try to deploy. Now, the Tennessee Titans were actually really good at establishing the run last week and making Will Levis look like a stud. I'm not saying that wasn't because Will Levis played well, because he did. But, man, and I'll get into that. The play action was working. Looking at the injury situation, we do know Connor Hayward's going to be starting at tight end for the Steelers. That's really the biggest piece of news. It does seem like Kenny Pickett's going to play. He did get banged up. Mitchell Trubisky had to replace him. Trubisky looked terrible. Now, their last game, and if you're looking at the data and stats, guys, last game was a rainy game. I don't know how much we can take away from that, although it does seem like they do need to get Jalen Warren more involved. That's the biggest takeaway there. Looking at the Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Hopkins currently questionable with the toe injury. He's expected to play. We do know that Ryan Tannehill is currently out, and so let's get into the Will Levis stuff. So, guys, don't get me wrong. Will Levis balled out. There's no denying that, but let's just break down how it went. They were really able to establish the run with Derrick Henry. I'll show you guys Derrick Henry's stats. Like, he had 22 carries, 101 yards. They could not stop him. Tajay Spears actually had himself a very good game as well. So that really set up the Tennessee Titans defense or offense in the ideal way that they wanted to be set up. They want to be running a bunch of play actions, and they did that. There's actually kind of I love the quarterback pump fake where it's just their shoulders, where like anyone that's actually kind of looking at it knows it's not a pass. He hit DeAndre Hopkins on a play doing that, and DeAndre Hopkins' first touchdown, guys, should not have counted. And I actually wonder how the rest of the game would have went for Will Levis if that happened, because it was smooth sailing for him the whole game. Don't get me wrong. He started out good. He started out with two really impressive throws that, to me, actually were his best throws in the day, and they were two incompletions. A tight end dropped it, I believe, a Kongu, and then I believe it was Westbrook no, it wasn't. Number 16, I can't think of who that is, dropped it. Was it Burks? I think it was Burks. He was on the sideline and just stepped out of bounds. That was a pretty good pass by Will Levis, though. Besides that, you look at his first 3 touchdowns, all to DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins had pretty clear OPI in the first one. Then on the second one, it was a pretty easy play. I mean, to be fair, any of the first 3 touchdowns any NFL quarterback should be able to make. Like, the second one was a slant play to DeAndre Hopkins where linebackers like covering him but not really covering him. It was super strange. Hopkins then turns on the Jets and scores a pretty easy touchdown. It was actually a little bit behind him, but oh well, he made the play. Will Levis did. And then on the third one, just complete blown coverage. I mean, Will Levis just freaking chucks stuff in the air. DeAndre Hopkins kind of slows down a little bit, gets underneath it and catches it, takes it to the end zone. So it's tough to honestly grade him because, don't get me wrong, he did look good. We didn't see that many mistakes. A little bit, I guess, in the pocket, but no, he looked good. Did he look any different than Ryan Tannehill thus far this season? I mean, I don't know, because it really did seem like the Falcons defense was like, all right, Will Levis, if we're going to lose this game, it's because you are going to hit the deep ball on us. And it did seem like that. We saw Falcons really on play actions biting on the run, which led to a lot of pretty easy throws. Now, don't get me wrong, he made these throws look good. I'm not talking down Will Levis. At the same time, I do think that was like the ideal situation for the Titans offense. And now the Steelers are going to be 1 week more prepared for that. And they might have been, the Falcons might have been preparing a little bit more for Malik Willis scrambling. And Will Levis did have a few carries. I saw 3 design runs and 1 QB sneak. So there is that factor in there, especially DFS-wise. Like, he could score a rushing touchdown as well. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't know if that made it sound like I'm a fan of Will Levis or if I was trying to talk him down. I'm just trying to set the proper expectations, and that the expectation should be we probably need another week to really gauge how he's going to be. But don't get me wrong, A+ for his first game. We'll say A. Little bit of room for improvement. Then looking at the rest of the Tennessee Titans, to me it is going to be more difficult. I do think Derrick Henry against the Steelers is going to be an intriguing play. Once again, I do think he's going to be heavily involved. The thing that we liked last week is that really because they were able to establish the run, they're able to do little play actions and then screens where Henry was able to leak out and was able to get some kind of easy receptions. 4 receptions in that game. He looked really good doing that. No touchdown, but was still able to manage 19.2 DraftKings points. He's someone I think we should be looking at. The question is where and how do we fit him in, because he is pretty priced up. Another issue with Derrick Henry is that Tajay Spears looks so good. And if you look at how, and it was a rain game, I want to make that clear. You look at how the Jaguars were able to beat up on the Steelers. It was with Travis Etienne, and Etienne is Spears is kind of more similar to Etienne than is Derrick Henry, although does that really matter? Probably not. At the same time, I do think that there are plays on film where the Titans are going to see it, especially maybe where Etienne was used for a screen, or maybe to get outside, or even just lined up as a receiver. That is where I could see a few more design plays going to Tajay Spears. He hasn't really had a huge breakout game, and guys, he has looked so good every time he touches the ball. You want to know why there's trade rumors with Derrick Henry? It's because Spears has looked good. Now I'm hyping him up a lot and watch he's going to fumble, but no, I think he's a good play at 5.4. Both safe because we know he's going to get some touches, but also I think there's some upside there. I'll show you guys the snap count between the two. And so we look at the Titans snap counts here. We're going to see the snap counts have been pretty spread out. I don't think people really realize how much Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears have been splitting a workload. Now, we only saw Spears get 44% of the snaps last week. That's because they were kind of in control rushing the football. And so it's a little bit, we don't know exactly what's going to happen there, although we do know that he's looked good. So I could see why someone would want to fade him. And I do want to mention, like, Treylon Burks got 50% of the snaps coming back from injury. He was expected to be their receiver number 1. See DeAndre Hopkins there. You know, we know Hopkins is a good player. We know he's kind of a target heavy guy. But if you look at like outside routes, that is where Treylon Burks is going to operate. And so if that play action is going to be hitting the way that it was last week, and we see Treylon Burks actually play more snaps, he is one of my favorite plays on the slate. And because he didn't do anything, like, he could actually be a sneaky captain option. Like, if we see him play closer to what he did at the start of the season, which 90% of the snaps in week 1, like, I don't know if we're going to see that right away, but even if we see like 75% of the snaps, which is what DeAndre Hopkins has been doing anyways, that's highly intriguing to me. And Westbrook, for what it's worth, he had been someone that had been playing about 80% of the snaps as well. We just might see his snap share go down a little bit. So I'm very excited about the opportunity of playing Treylon Burks at a cheap price tag as the player that was supposed to be the receiver number 1, their top, I don't want to say their top pass catcher, because I think DeAndre Hopkins was always supposed to get the most targets and receptions, but I think Burks was expected to have around the most yards. He was kind of a year 2 breakout candidate that's unfortunately for him has been banged up. So I like him. And if Will Levis is that good, I think we might see something like this, honestly. Maybe gets a touchdown. And so at that price tag, I do like that. For what it's worth, like, value-wise, Kyle Phillips did play a little bit. This would only be a play if you think the Steelers are going to be ahead by a lot. We saw Kyle Phillips get 45 and 27% of the snaps. But yes, if it's much more of a negative game script where they're playing from behind, Kyle Phillips should get a little bit more work. He's not terrible. He's kind of just a slot receiver. Nothing great there. Okonkwo, I don't know. I struggle with it. Like, he has been productive lately. We are seeing him play more snaps as well. Like, we love that. To me, I would rather play Burks at a cheaper price tag with the upside rather than maybe play a little bit of safety there for Okonkwo. And then for what it's worth, do I want to play Will Levis? I don't know, guys. I really don't know. I'm struggling to get there, to be honest with you, because I'd rather go Henry. For what it's worth, I'd probably rather go Spears, and I'd rather go Treylon Burks. Like, to me, that's where I want to go. Although, like I said, he looked good. He did. At the same time, I think the Steelers will be able to get home on him a little bit more than the Falcons were. So let's go ahead and get into the Falcons. And I will say, guys, it almost does seem like if you're not playing Will Levis, you probably do want to be playing the Steelers defense, just because, you know, you get him a little bit shaky. It's the short week, all that stuff. Looking at the Steelers side of it, much more difficult to predict. We do know that Mitchell Trubisky was terrible. But Kenny Pickett's going to be back, so that doesn't really matter too much. I do want to start out with Deontay Johnson, though, because to me, he's kind of a clear-cut choice for the captain spot. And I know I said that on Monday. That was the one bad showdown slate of the week. 2 out of 3 good ones. That was so bad. Josh McDaniels got fired, though, which is funny. Just about the Raiders stuff. Don't want to get into a tangent. It's funny because I would say the most alarming coaching decision he made this season was actually starting Aiden O'Connell. Guys, he looked terrible. So bad. Literally the worst. He's been the worst quarterback thus far this season. And what's the first move that they make is to say Aiden O'Connell is going to be starting. I'm like, oh boy. That's certainly interesting there. But that's neither here nor there for this slate. It's just funny. Looking at the Steelers, though, we saw Deontay Johnson plays 66% snaps, and then instantly 90%. Yeah, Deontay Johnson is a stud. I think everyone knows that. I'm actually very shocked at the price tag here. 14 targets in that game, and that was a rain game, guys. He dominated in the rain. Like, it was a sloppy game. Like, there's no reason he should have had that good of a game. And if you watched him last year, you know he's a route tactician. He's just a casual stud, honestly. Like, because he hasn't been scoring that many touchdowns, people don't love him that much. But no, he gets open early and often, and there should be some safety there, especially at such a cheap price tag. And so to me, he's kind of the easy option there. Now, some people might be going with George Pickens. I don't know. There's just something slightly off about him. Like, it's clear he has the talent. It's not the best at creating separation. I think we all know that, but his ability to make big plays is definitely there. We see him almost, and I say almost because this guy has had so many awesome sideline catches that are just ruled out. It's just crazy. He had one last week. And then last week, he also did his typical jump where he tries to jump at the defender. We've seen that in prime time a couple of times. Well, this time he did it in between two defenders, and it worked, and he slipped through them. I think it was kind of because of how wet he was. Kind of slip between the two defenders in the air, scores a touchdown. Pretty cool play, though. He's fine. I don't want to say this is the George Kittle rule. For those of you guys that don't know, the George Kittle rule, and it really hasn't applied lately because Deebo Samuel's been out. But when the Niners are fully healthy, George Kittle is someone that is so hit or miss that on a showdown slate, you really are either going in on him as a captain's pick because you're saying he's going to break the slate, or he's going to be kind of an afterthought in the game, not going to be worthwhile at his price tag to play him in the flex. I don't know if I'm almost there with George Pickens, but it does kind of feel somewhat that way. If you can fit him into your builds, like shoulder shrug wise, I'd be fine with it. And that's kind of where we're at right now because I don't mind ending up on Jaylen Warren. I will say Najee Harris was more involved in the passing game, did look good doing it. And I do kind of feel bad for Najee Harris. He hasn't looked terrible this season, but it's just not the type of player that's doing well in the NFL right now. Like Derrick Henry, sure, at times can be very productive. AJ Dillon, that same kind of type, he hasn't looked bad either, but having that kind of bruiser back that can get you 3.5 carries or whatever, it doesn't really matter because, well, the defenses can kind of shut that down. So especially against Tennessee, I don't think this is worthwhile. Now, the way he would get there is in the passing game. That's how you need to be used against him. But why not just use Jaylen Warren, who, honestly, the more I watch him, the more I see him make plays. He reminds me of Austin Eckler. Like, he's that, and maybe it's just the number, but he's kind of that small, quick twitch back, always making pop plays. Maybe he needs to do like the drums after he scores a touchdown. Hint to the guitar, Eckler does. But I see him getting involved in the passing game a lot in this game. And once again, last week was a little bit rainy and whatnot. Tough to really take anything away from that, but that was his worst game of the season besides week 1 against the Niners. He is someone they should be turning to more, and we did see that kind of maybe be the case last week where it was a 50-50 split. I think everyone's kind of hoping that he gets more and more work. We'll see. And then for what it's worth, I do want to point out the difference in snaps between Calvin Austin and Allen Robinson. I'll show you their stats first here. Allen Robinson, 1 target, no points. Calvin Austin, 2 target, almost 4 points there, 2 rushing attempts. So 4.9 points total. We look at the snaps though, and it's kind of shocking because I was watching film and it felt like he was clearly the number 3. Like, if you would have made me guess, I'd have been like, yeah, of course Calvin Austin played more snaps than Allen Robinson. And then you would have been like, no, Allen Robinson played 70% of the snaps. I'd have been like, what? Are you kidding me? Because it did not seem like that, guys. It was crazy. Allen Robinson's running cardio out there. Poor guy, because he was so good at the start of his career. But yeah, Calvin Austin's more of a dynamic playmaker. But at the same time, why not just use George Pickens that way? I know a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans are like, yeah, Matt Cannon needs to go, which is not news, but it's just weird. We did see Connor Hayward play 85% of the snaps against the Rams 2 weeks ago, and then 72% of the snaps last week. That's kind of the norm there. Washington is someone, a lot of people thought was going to get more work. We didn't see that last week, so tough to say if that'll occur this week. So that being said, it is pretty easy to make a pretty solid build on this slate, and heck, the issue we might see is that you might have salary left over now. Yes, we probably want to get to one of the quarterbacks, and don't get me wrong, we probably want to get to DeAndre Hopkins. So let's try to rebuild this so we can get him into our builds, and we'll see what that looks like. And so it's kind of probably a simple pivot like this. I don't know if we need to be playing the quarterbacks. Doesn't feel great fading them, especially with how good Will Levis picked, especially with playing these 3 as his top 2 pass catchers theoretically, and then Derrick Henry. But I think that's kind of the route. And so then we're left with Calvin Austin. Feels like a pretty good build. That's going to be all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage. If you did, make sure to give a like and subscribe. Do appreciate it, guys. Good luck on this slate. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing.